and pasted a fake deed using circumstances that I'll go into in a moment, but basically broke into the home, changed the locks, and claimed this home as their own. They lived there in plain sight. Nobody knew. Imagine if any of our clients, friends, neighbors, realtors, anybody had anything to do.
All of this came out, as you mentioned earlier, was because back in 2017, that's when the lights or the Christmas house stopped being the sensational of the Christmas house.
Now, I'm not an agent and I don't know legalities about leasing or renting and this and the other, but I do know once you break the locks, you move in and change the locks in the property, you have the upper hand.
It's really hard. They have some sort of law. I don't know what this law is that protects them, but I think they have something. Good morning and welcome back to Doral Homes Real Estate Talks. And today we have a captivating episode of Doral Homes Real Estate Talks. I am thrilled to have a familiar face rejoining us today, Angela Banegas, a seasoned title officer known for her deep expertise in the real estate world. Angela has previously enlightened us with her invaluable insights into the intricacies of title services, and today she's back with a story that you definitely don't want to miss. The case of the famous Christmas house squatters. It's a tale that not only captivates but also educates on some crucial aspects of property rights and real estate law. Whether you are a homeowner, a real estate enthusiast, or just someone who loves a good story, Angela's discussion on this unusual situation will shed light on the unexpected challenges one might face in the world of real estate. So tune in, get comfortable, and let's dive into this fascinating story with Angela Banegas. Trust me, this is an episode you don't want to miss. Welcome back to Doral Homes. I'm your host, Betty Gonzalez, and today is episode 7. So let's go. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me back. Again, I'm so honored.
I am so happy. I can't wait to dig into this story. So tell me a little bit how you first heard about this Christmas house story and the squatters, because the main highlight here is that these people went on the radar for years, and at the end of the day, they were squatters. So tell us a little bit more, Angela.
Well, this story is amazing because I've been doing title for years and years and years. My own children cannot explain what I do. So when this story happened, I said, oh my God, I have to tell you this. And everybody who I've told has been astounded, because who would have thought it would have happened in our backyard, like you said? Who would have thought it would be something that everybody would have heard about? This has actually made national news, New York Post, the Daily Mail. So the wonderful Fort Lauderdale Christmas home that every year was on Channel 7. I think it first started because the neighbors were angry about the traffic. They couldn't get home at night because people were coming from far and wide. And the owners of the home were on TV, their faces plastered everywhere, you know, hiding in plain sight, if you will. Come to find out, after a divorce between husband and wife co-conspirators, came to light, Kathy, who is a former realtor, and her husband, a former mortgage officer.
Shame on them.
They exploited the system. They basically broke into this home, cut and pasted a fake deed using circumstances that I'll go into in a moment, but basically broke into the home, changed the locks, and claimed this home as their own. They lived there in plain sight. Nobody knew. Imagine if any of our clients, friends, neighbors, realtors, anybody had anything to do with buying or selling this home. First of all, if I was the buyer, I'd be telling everybody, oh my God, I bought this home, the famous Fort Lauderdale Christmas home, and come to find out.
I could just envision myself as a real estate agent. I would market it that way. You know, I have the famous Fort Lauderdale plantation house, Christmas house for sale. Who wants what a marketing?
Well, buyer or seller's agents.
Yes.
I mean, everybody would just want a piece of it. It's so well known. So I just delved into some details. Come to find out, the original owner was a former Miami Dolphins player. And his deed, now there weren't any details further into this, but his deed, how he obtained the property, was not proper. So when Kathy and her husband, Mark, decided to take a look at the house and they were going to buy it, they found that out. The Dolphins player, the former owner, was going to sell it for $900,000. So an investor swooped in, bought it from the Dolphins player, had items in the home. Mark and Kathy, knowing that the deed that the Miami Dolphins owner gave the investor was false, knew that the investor did not have a proper deed to the property.
Angela, I'm sorry to cut you off. Let's talk about proper transfer and let's explain what a deed actually is in a real estate transaction. Because I could just see my audience or our listeners like, okay, what's the difference? What do you mean proper? Do they have a deed? Did they not have a deed? What's going on with this deed?
And this is awesome because all of this is so well explained in this example. This is the paper that the owner signs giving the buyer the property, the actual transfer of property, the most important document. They, Mark and Kathy, falsified it. They faked it. And they went and they filed it. And then they broke into the house and threw the investors' items out. And
so this is interesting. So there was something buggy with the player, with the athlete, right? That purchased the property was something that wasn't clear in the deed. Then an investor bought it, but because the deed wasn't clear, it was a problem in the deed. It wasn't a proper transfer. These other people came over and ousted the investor, even though they rightfully kind of own it on maybe in transaction, but not on real paper, not on the deed itself. Right. So someone else came. The reason I want to bring this out is because some people buy properties out of state here all the time, especially people investing. So this could happen to someone that invested thinking that they're the rightful owner. And somebody comes in, they just change the locks and they could transfer the deed.
And what's more important is that these things are only being uncovered because one woman came forward who was a part of this scenario, a part of this travesty, if you will. But without her having come forward, none of this would have been discovered. And so this is something that you may buy a home, have a home 10 years, and then all of a sudden this comes out. There's sometimes no way to avoid forgeries, or there's no way to know that it's a forgery until it's too late.
Right. And I'm glad that you brought this up because that brings me to this question that I wrote down for you. There's something as a statute of limitations. So they've been here in this property since, I think, 2007.
Correct.
However, the statute of limitations in Florida for this kind of fraud can only go back to 10 years. So they can only be charged up to 2013. Could you explain to us a little bit what the statute of limitation means? What does that mean? Like if somebody hears this, yeah, but the statute of limitations only go back for 10 years. What does that mean?
So that means, for example, it's kind of like a radius. It's kind of like a circle of responsibility, if you will. They could have been in the home for 4 years and they would have been responsible for all the charges and all the penalties, etc., for all 4 of those years. Now we get to 7 years, all 7 they'll be responsible for. You hit 12 and we're outside of that circle of 10 years. So all they can be responsible for, all that they can be brought up on, are for the 10 years of that weight of responsibility, the liens and whatever else that they might be able to do.
Oh my God, Angela, you painted out so good. I was like, I could just envision this radius and like 7, 4, 10, 7 years, and then 12 years. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean that after, 10 years, you should think that you're good and you're not, and you took 10 years of bad as well. But it's almost a silver lining for them, but that is what the statute calls for. And with taxes, that's a 7-year statute. So there are different statutes for each individual scenario.
Okay. So for the fraud itself of the deed is 10 years, but for tax purposes, it's only 7 years.
Well, somebody had gone and paid those taxes, if for example, that's where tax deeds come in, and that's a whole different scenario. But if they hadn't paid their taxes and they were squatting there, somebody could have swooped in and taken it from them, but they did everything right. Fact.
Apparently, because let me read this to you.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell me a little bit more. So they owe right now, or Kathy, because unfortunately the husband has passed away back in 2020. They owe in taxes right now $109,000 back taxes. And listen to this: for 7 years they were claiming homestead exemption. So now they owe $34,724 for fraud because they pretended that they were the owners, and then they were on top of that benefiting for a homestead exemption that they now have to pay back.
Correct.
So what you're saying, those are the 7 years that they can only go 7 years for taxes. They cannot go 10.
Correct. And for each different aspect that I'm sure that they're going to be targeted from, each different area that's going to be pursued, each different avenue, there'll be some sort of statute of limitations. But the layers of those things that are going to be against them, it's just going to be phenomenal. It definitely was not worth it.
That is just crazy. All of this came out, as you mentioned earlier, was because back in 2017, that's when the lights or the Christmas house stopped being the sensational of the Christmas house, which, by the way, what a perfect timing for this story to come out during the month of December, right before Christmas. You mentioned to me that they called it, what did they call this?
I'm looking again. The Nightmare Before Christmas is what the appraiser's office has dubbed the investigation.
We laugh now, but think about it. That could have been somebody's property that they really needed, because the only reason that it also happened this way is because the original owner was going for foreclosure because they owe more than they could pay or sell it for. Then an investor came and bought it, but had this investor actually fought it, and he lost in court because they brought that they had the deed, and they were able to prove that they had a deed even though it was fake. It looked really real. That is so crazy. I'm sorry, but what I was gonna say was, before I went on a tangent, was that they were squatting. So could you explain what this mean in layman's terms, because you're really good at this?
So squatting is kind of crazy. And it's something that people actually became good at. They would look for a home, drive by the home, scope out the home, if you will, different times of day and night, make sure somebody wasn't there. For a while, especially back then, there were so many investors in Florida, and there were so many investors that were from other states and other countries, like you mentioned. And those people weren't here to be vigilant about their properties. So people would drive by, see that there's nobody there. The mail might, pile up. And so they go and they change the locks and they go in. And now, I'm not an agent, and I don't know legalities about leasing or renting and this and the other, but I do know once you break the locks, you move in and change the locks in the property, you have the upper hand. It's really hard. They have some sort of law
I don't know what this law is that protects them, but I think they have something. I wish I knew. Maybe we'll do it in another episode.
Kind of crazy what it leads you into, but yes. And once they change the locks, then all they do is come up with a fake lease, get the FP&L in their name. That's easy as pie. You do that on the phone. Once they have possession of the property, they are officially squatting. Squatters come in and paint the walls, they decorate, they will take care of the lawn, they take care of the property like they live there, because they do, and they make it their own. And I've heard horror stories about lots of money and lots of time to get these people out, and they just go in and change the locks.
So let me ask you this, Angela. Let's say, for example, this is a really good question that I wanted to ask you, because my husband and I, we have 4 properties that we are that we own, and they're kind of like an investment portfolio, and we want to start paying them off. And one of the things that my husband told me was, I kind of feel a little uncomfortable having to pay for a house, because while it's under a mortgage, it's kind of have a security layer there that somebody cannot claim the property because the mortgager is the owner. While we own it outright, it's kind of like it leaves a level of unprotection. And I kind of wanted to know, is there anything that people like ourselves, like we have a few properties that we want to pay off within the next few years, that we can do to protect ourselves, rightfully, kind of like title protection?
Oh, I am so glad that you just said this. This is amazing. First and foremost, while the thought process behind keeping the mortgage on there for that reason, it sounds reasonable. Your mortgage company is not going to care how you get them their money, but they're going to want their money. The only time they're going to come in to assist is when it's foreclosing against you. They won't include the squatters. But so it is a great idea in theory, but that does not cover you in any way. Okay. They would not assist you in pursuing anything. However, there is a wonderful program Florida has, and I didn't think about this before we were speaking on this subject, so I don't have the information readily available, but it is on all of the county websites. And you can sign up as the owner of a property to have a copy of any deed and to be notified if any transfer of property has taken place where you are the owner. I signed up personally by email. I live in Broward County. It was super, super easy. And should there be any funny business, any forgery, any deed that is transferring the property that I am the owner of currently, I will be notified and receive a copy of the document. That is something that's new, that's been in place. And I can tell you that I went to a conference at least 20 years ago when Harvey Bruin was the clerk of courts. And I won't forget this because somebody forged a deed, his deed to his personal home in this conference. And they were trying to make the point of how some sort of program of this nature would be extremely beneficial, extremely useful. And while he was not against it, he wasn't advocating it for it either. They didn't really have any which way. And they went and they put on the big board a copy of his home that they said, well, if it had been in place, you would have been notified that we transferred your home to this. And it was, clearly they went back and they took care of it or whatever they did, but they filed it against him and showed him right there, if you had gotten this copy in the mail, and now 20 years later, it's in place. And how valuable is that?
Wow, that is so good. Okay, so now that I know that we have something here in Florida, I need to find out if they have something similar in Texas and Alabama. That's where my properties are. They're not here.
Oh,
yes.
Well, then I would hope that they do, because really it's invaluable.
No, this is good to know. Oh my God, I'm so glad that I have this podcast and I bring people just like you that are subject matter expert, because otherwise the real estate is such a vast and deep industry that has so many intricacies, and one person does not know everything. So we have to bring people like yourself, a title agent, that can tell us these little nuances that could protect us. because this is our property. This is some of us, the highest investment that we have. I will venture out to say majority of us, unless they're like millionaires.
And true. I mean, this is where I was able to explain to my family, friends, children what I do. This scenario, this entire scenario, if you were to have purchased a property where there was forgery in the line of title, would be covered by title insurance. This is what I do. Things that even in this case, which clearly nobody would have ever known or discovered if Mrs. Kathy, ex-realtor, had not brought it to everyone's attention. If someone had bought that house, marketed, how wonderful. Can you imagine if they've foregone the maybe $1,200 charge of title insurance to save a quick buck? They would not have a home. They would have nothing to fight for them. With title insurance, which is one of the smallest charges in the aspect, the ratio of the purchase, and something that never expires for the time that you're the owner of the home, that would forever protect you. Can you imagine having owned a home, bought it, had children, and expected to give a home to your children, and because you wanted to save $1,200, you lose it after they're having their own children? I mean, can you imagine that?
A whole life, two lives, two generations.
Yeah, because it didn't have to be uncovered now. What if it wasn't uncovered for another 15 years and then somebody else wanted it back for their children? I mean, it becomes a very emotional subject.
Right. Wow. Thank you so much. So let me see what else I have. I have a lot of notes here. Even the property appraiser of the county said that they have never purchased this property, because Kathy went back and said that they have purchased it at $900,000, but they have never been able to prove that they actually did. So what messages do you want to leave the audience with in reference to this crazy case?
Well, first of all, anybody can be a Grinch. You know, sometimes it's the people in plain sight that will shock you, because who would have thought that you're going to break into a home, you're going to fake a deed, and then you're going to go on national news and create a spectacle of that home and make it famous? This is just, even anyone's incredible due diligence would not have uncovered this, because sometimes thieves are that good. And that's why title insurance is needed. That's why agents are needed. That's why professionals in a transaction of this nature, which, as you said, is most people's biggest lifetime purchase. This is not the time where you pinch. You just
inspire me another question. Could you imagine they would have sold by owner?
Oh my God.
And somebody would have came in and also want to buy by owner because they want to save a buck or two.
And then you think, of course, look at these people, they're on the news, they're trustworthy. You don't even, you redefine your definition of trustworthy based on seeing them on TV.
Perception.
Yes. Look at that scenario. That would have been an absolute horrible scenario.
Right. So, by the way, guys, this property is off the market, but guess what? The value of this property right now is estimated to be over 1.5 million, close to actually 1.7 million. So that would have been a big purchase, devastating for somebody had they gone to do a for sale by owner. I mean, think about it. They claim to have bought it or purchased it at $900,000, 2007. More than 10 years ago. So yes, this is a property that is in a great area. Like Plantation, the houses there are huge.
They are. They're almost, I mean, I don't even know what the acreage is, but I'm sure it's not just a lot. It's got to be at least a double lot. I mean, yes.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much, Angela, for talking about this subject with our audience today. Again, could you refresh their minds or where they can find you if they want to do some sort of title transaction? Remember, guys, when you are putting a team together to purchase a property, you want to have a great lender. you want to have a great agent, whether you're selling it or purchasing a property. You want to have an inspector, and you want to have your title company. And we can kind of like give you references, but you also have to do your own homework. And you can listen to people just like Angela Banegas today that they have been in business for a long time. They know what they're talking about. Please do your research so that you'll be in the right hands when you're doing or when you're purchasing or transferring a transaction as big as a real estate. Again, Angela, tell them where they can find you.
Well, you can always reach me at Banegas, ABANEGAS at Partners Land Services. And that is the name of the company I work for. Partners, as in my partner, your partner, Partners Land Services. And it's Banegas at partnerslandservices.com. Or you can always give me a call, 754-701-9075. Even if it's just a quick question, even if you're closing with another company, I never have any problems answering questions.
I can testify to that. Again, Angela, thank you so much for coming on today. And this is not the last time. This is our second time. So thank you. Take care and have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.